Okay guys, in this video we just want to talk about factoring, and I'm pretty sure I talked about factor by grouping and the normal type of factoring in my Persian video. But in this video, since it might be for a bigger audience, I just want to give you a shortcut and just the general formula that we use for factoring. First, I want to tell you why do we actually factor things out. And basically, a lot of times in calculus and in math, we in algebra, we basically do a lot of factorings because of the fact that we want to find our x-intercept. So we basically use factoring to find x-intercept because that's when our y value is 0, and we're just trying to figure out what the value of x is when y is equal to 0. And to be honest, there are all a lot of ways that you can do that. Again, we can use a factor by grouping. We can use the easy factoring thing where we're like trying to find two numbers and multiply to give you one thing and add up to other thing. But I believe that the easiest way is to just use the quadratic equation, which is x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. This is the easiest formula that you can use to figure out your x-intercepts or your factors of x. But a lot of times you only use this when the highest degree of our x is 2, or when your highest degree of x is squared or 2. That's when you use this, and that's why it's called the quadratic. And it is going to give you two different answers. The first one is negative b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And then the second one is negative b minus square root divided by 2a. Okay, square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And the most important thing about this is that you need to know that this only works when the highest degree of x is squared or 2. Okay? Now, the general form that these our x's might take is basically ax squared plus bx plus c. And as you can see, you can recognize that these letters are showing up in our letter in the quadratic equation. Basically, all these letters are showing up in that equation. And the other one is x squared plus bx plus c. And as you can see, there's an a value, and that a value is 1. That's why we don't write that a, because we know that a is equal to 1. But whenever you see this, you just know that you need to use this formula, or you can just use other methods. And if you want a video for that one, you can always like tell me. But in this one, I just want to tell you that just use this formula and you'll be fine. Let's say we have x squared plus 5x plus 6. How do we factor this, or how do we figure out our x-intercepts? And I should have talked about this in the beginning of the video. We are doing this because we are going to basically draw out our parabolas from my last video. Because in the last video we talked about how those parabolas can have two different forms, and we're talking about the second form because the first form is like kind of easy to figure out. But this is where we actually use our x and y intercepts to draw everything out. Okay, now this first we need to think about what type of general formula does it look like. And as you can see, it's the second one where we don't have any a value, or our a value is equal to 1. So there's two ways that you can do this. The first way is to look at the number that doesn't have any x with it, which in this case is 6, and then find two numbers that multiply to give you 6 but add up to 5. And the first two numbers that I might think about is like, let's say 6 and 1. When we multiply 6 and 1, we get 6, but when we add 6 and 1, we get 7, which means it's not going to work. We have to find another number. And the other two numbers are 2 and 3. And the way I always write it down is 2, 3, and then I put a plus sign, and then 2 times 3. Now 2 plus 3 is 5, and 2 times 3 is 6, which means it's going to give me the answer. 2 times 3 is 6, 2 plus 3 is 5, which means it's going to be, these two numbers are going to be essential for our, when we're like basically trying to write down the factored form of our equation. Since the value of a in this equation is 1, or we don't have any value, basically we don't have any a, but we know that a has a value and it's 1, we don't have to account for anything else. We can just use this shortcut and write this in its factored form. And the way we write it down is x plus 3 and then x plus 2. And again, these two can be switched, like their spot can be switched. You can put 2 in here and 3 in there, but you have to have both of them in here. Now if we distribute this, we get x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 3 times 2 is 6 equals to 0. X squared plus 5x plus 6, since they have the same powers, I can add them up, equals to 0. And you can see that these two are equal to each other. Now, what does this tell me about my x-intercept? This tells me that if I set this equal to 0 and if I set this part equal to 0, it should give me two x values where my y values are equal to 0, which means it's the x-intercept. So our first x-intercept is x is equal to x plus 3 equals 0, which is x is equal to, if I move this over there, it's going to be negative 3. And then the second one is x plus 2 equals to 0. And then I move this over here, negative 2, which means the x-intercepts are negative 3 and negative 2. Now, when you first learn about factoring, a lot of teachers encourage you to figure out those two numbers and just, do the whole math part. But for the most part, when you don't have any teacher who's guiding you to do something, or when you're free to use any method, you can basically use the formula that we have before, minus 40c divided by 2a, to figure out your answer for this question. So let's do it quickly. X is equal to negative. Instead of b, I have to put the value of b in this equation. Not the value of b, yeah, basically the value of b, which is basically the coefficient of the x with the first power, or the x with a power of 1, which is 5, plus or minus square root of b squared, which is again the coefficient of the x with the first power, which is 5, squared minus 4. Instead of a, I should put the value of a, which is 1 in this case, times c, which is 6, divided by 2 times a, which is 1. Now, we have negative b, or negative 5, plus or minus square root of 25 minus 4 times 6, 24, divided by 2. Now negative 5 plus or minus 25 minus 24 is 1, divided by 2. And this is x is equal to this. Now, since I told you before, you know that one of our answers should be negative 5 plus the square root of 1 divided by 2, and the other one should be negative 5 minus square root of 1 over 2. So negative 5 plus square root of 1 is just 1 over 2. Negative 5 minus 1 over 2. Negative 5 minus 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 5 and negative 1 is negative 6 over 2. And our x is equal to negative 3. And as you can see, our answers match with the answers that we got for factoring without using this quadratic equation. And as you can see, we get the same answer, and this might be a little bit complicated to do, but it's one of the easier ways to do it without even thinking about it, and just memorizing this formula will be really helpful. And sometimes it's helpful to just, not do factor by grouping, which might be kind of like a difficult concept for some people. And I just wanted to tell you that you can always use this. Now let's see, we have 2x squared plus 7x plus 3, and we're asked to factor this out. This is where we can basically use the quadratic formula, but sometimes teachers might want you to just use factor by grouping or just factoring in general. And the way you do it is, since this has a value of a and a is equal to 2, we have to change our methods a little bit, but the methods should be kind of similar to each other. The first thing we need to do is multiply these two numbers. And why are we multiplying them? It's because we are trying to account for that that a that we have in next to our x squared. And if we didn't have that value of 2, we would have been fine with just, figuring out two numbers that multiply to this and add to that. So since we have that 2, we have to multiply 2 and 3 together, and 2 times 3 is 6. Now we have to figure out two numbers that multiply to 6 but add up to 7. Now the first two numbers in my brain might be 3 and 2, because 3 times 2 is 6 and 3 plus 2 is 5. So that doesn't work. So the next numbers might be 6 and 1. If I multiply them, I get 6, but if I add them up, we get 7, which means these two numbers are the numbers that might work. So first, that will work, not might. Now, since again we have a 2x squared, we have to account for it. So we're gonna write the middle term in terms of 1x and 6x. 2x squared plus 1x plus 6x plus 3 equals to 0. Now, once you get to this part, this is where the term factor by grouping comes up, because you basically treat the first two terms as one group and the second two terms as another group. And you basically look for the biggest multiplier between these two numbers, between these two terms. Now, if I look at the first one, the biggest multiplier between both of them is x. And sometimes the easiest way to figure that out is just look at the numbers and see what element or what number or what letter do both of these numbers have. And in this case, you can see that x is one of them. X is the common thing between these two. So I'm just going to factor out an x. And when we factor something out, we have to divide the terms by that letter or by that term that we're basically factoring out. So in this case, I have 2x squared. If I do 2x squared divided by x, we get 2x plus 1x divided by x and x cancel out, and we're left with 1. Now for the second two terms, again, I'm looking for something that both of them have. And in this case, you can see that it's not a letter because 3 doesn't have any x's with it. So we know it should be a number, and that number is 3, because this is divisible by 3 and that's also divisible by 3. So the biggest multiplier is 3. So we need to divide it by 3. These two cancel out. We get 2x plus 3 divided by 3 is 1. And sometimes you can use this shortcut that if you look at these two, 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1, they match each other. So you don't even have to do this part, but you need to know what you're taking out, okay? Once you figure out what you're taking out, you know that these two should match, because this is when you do factoring again. You can again factor out these two from these two terms. Now I'm gonna factor 2x plus 1 from both of these terms, and that means that I have to divide the first term by 2x plus 1, and if I do that, 2x plus 1, these two cancel out and I'm left with x plus, again, I'm taking that out, which means I'm left with 3 equals to 0. Now, as you can see, I get two values for my x. The first one is 2x plus 1 equals 0, 2x minus 1, and basically x is equal to -1/2. And our second one is x plus 3 equals 0, x is equal to -3. And this might be an easy thing for some people to do, But some people might think that this is a really complicated way of doing this. But again, you can always use the quadratic formula to give you the same answer, and we will do that in this video. Again, I'm using negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And this is x is equal to. Okay, now what's my b value? You can see that it's 7 plus or minus square root of 7, which is square root of b squared, which is 7 squared, minus 4 instead of a, the value of a, which is 2, the value of c, which is 3, divided by 2 times a, which is 2. Okay, negative 7 plus or minus square root of 49 minus 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24. Yep, divided by 4. We have negative 7 plus or minus square root of 25 divided by 4. And we know that this is two numbers, so negative 7 plus the square root of 25 is 5 over 4, and negative 7 plus minus 5 over 4. Now negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2 over 4, and negative 2 divided by 4 is negative 1 over 2. And these two, negative 12 over 4, and the answer is negative 3. As you can see, we get the same answer, and honestly this is the best way to do it. And if I have time, or I have done a lot of practice with these questions, so whenever I look at the question I know what method to use, and I suggest that you do a lot of practice with these questions and try to use the first and second method first and kind of like get practice with that, and then use the quadratic formula. But again, some people don't want to do it, so just use the quadratic formula and you will be fine. Thank you.